Matt, thanks for coming in the studio. Thanks for being a part of Portside Live.
Thank you for having me.
You're coming off a European tour recently.
Yes.
Tell me about where you've been and what that's been like.
Yeah, so I originally was doing a show in London with a friend of mine, Desiree Dawson, and I kind of booked a little tour around the show date and played a few more shows in London and played 5 shows in Slovakia, which was really fun. And yeah, Europe was great. I really enjoyed Europe.
Yeah, well, that's wild. What was kind of the vibe like over there? What venues were you playing in? How was kind of your music received?
Yeah, so it was like kind of cafes, clubs, bars, I guess, in Slovakia mostly. And yeah, the audiences were really great. Like they were just kind of a lot of people that were interested in like just a Canadian artist being in Slovakia, because it's kind of a smaller country and like not a lot of people travel there for shows. So it was cool to just like have people come out because they saw I was playing, saw I was Canadian, and were like checked out the music online, and just like very attentive crowds. And it was a really cool experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, you've developed a bit of a fan base here in Canada and North America, and that's cool to kind of get some exposure to a totally different country. What's kind of the music scene like over there? Like you kind of describe yourself as indie soul or alternative soul.
Yeah, kind of something like that.
Yeah, what are people listening to over there?
I think it's very eclectic mix over there. There's a lot of like prog, jazz, rock stuff, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, they do have a very eclectic kind of taste over there. But yeah, it was a lot of kind of prog stuff, even though I don't really know what that means. Yeah. But I feel like that's what it was.
Yeah. Kind of going back to that, you kind of describe yourself as indie soul or alt soul. Where have you who've been your influences growing up, and as you've kind of culminated your musical talent?
Yeah, so I had like a lot of different influences when I was young. You know, I kind of listened to a lot of the like usual kid stuff, like alternative music and like Incubus and stuff like that, and like Jack Johnson as well, and like Bob Marley, Sublime, like all that stuff. And then I kind of got into a lot of like jazz kind of groovy stuff for a while, and some hip hop stuff. And I was just like always interested in music. Like I've always been very like kind of interested in like, if I hear something, I want to explore more about it and find out more about it. And yeah, a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, that's cool. So growing up, I mean, in your household, was music a component of your household? And I know you grew up abroad as well, so tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, music was like always around. Nobody really played. Like my mom played some piano, and like we did piano lessons, but I was never really into that. And my dad was just like a big music fan. Like he would always order albums and just kind of like sit around after work and like listen to albums. And there was all sorts of stuff, blues and jazz and pop, and I absorbed some of that. Yeah. And yeah, living like overseas, it was kind of like we didn't have as much access to music. Mm-hmm. So like if you had a CD, like you kind of cherished it, and if your friend had a certain CD, like you would track them down, and like it was like a bit less accessible. So I think we weren't as tapped into like the mainstream of like American pop culture. So like maybe we'd listen to some weird stuff, or I don't know. We were just, I'd get excited about CDs for sure.
Yeah. The good old days where you'd listen to an album like, 100 times because you didn't have access to other music. I feel like now we're just so inundated by music that there's so much variety out there. It can feel a little overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. I remember we used to order like albums, and they would take like 2.5 months to come.
Right.
And like when they showed up, like I was just so excited for the whole week. Yeah.
Now, where'd you actually grow up abroad?
So I was born in Washington State, and then we moved to Saudi Arabia for 5 years.
Wow.
And lived in Pakistan for a little bit, and then Kenya for like a lot of high school. Yeah. And then I finished high school in Vernon, like BC, Okanagan.
Wow. So all over the place. Was it part of your parents' job, or what was?
Yeah, my parents both worked in medicine, and like they started doing that, and then my dad worked for like the Foreign Service, and my mom worked for like local hospitals, and they're just kind of an adventurous, like I think they just always wanted to travel, and they're just like, you know, we have these kids, let's just drag them along and live, you know.
Yeah.
So that's
really cool. So when did you kind of know that music was something that you wanted to pursue professionally?
I don't like, it's kind of hard to say, because when you're a kid, like you always like I was definitely a dreamer, like you know, as soon as you write one song, you're like, oh, I'm gonna be famous, like this is so good, right? And then you're like, you kind of develop your sound, and like it gets a bit more complicated as far as like wanting to be a professional musician. Like I never really was like a very goal oriented person, you know, like I'm kind of a lazy person, but I did always like, and I was definitely a shy musician when I was young. So, you know, I always wanted to pursue it since I was like 13 years old, since I first started writing songs. I just didn't know how, and I had no idea if that was even something that you could do, or like how you could achieve that, because I was very much not in any sort of scene where I had like examples of how someone does that. Yeah. And even until I got older, you know, I was kind of not really in music scenes. I never really played in that many bands. So, but I've always like wanted to pursue it as a career, for sure.
How'd you like, did somebody kind of mentor you or inspire you or encourage you, or how'd you start actually leaning into music as a profession? Given, you know, you said you didn't really know how, when did you kind of realize that it was something that could be actually possible?
Yeah. Well, I went to, after high school, I went to engineering and producing school. So for a couple years, and that was like not really this scene for me, or like I just I came out of school feeling not really like a sound engineer or a music producer. I still just kind of wanted to be an artist and still had no clue how I was going to do that, and lived in Vancouver for a while, and then I started playing with my friend Desiree Dawson, actually. I played drums.
That's who you toured with in Slovakia?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, not in Slovakia, but we played in London.
Okay.
And that was probably 7-8 years ago, and I played drums in her band, and kind of I was still very shy, like songwriter, and I would show her my songs, and she's like, oh, those songs are so good, like you should play them. You should play them at this show. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, okay, sure. And then we'd be at the show, and she'd be like, okay, Matt's got a song now. And like she would just like throw me on, you know, and like be like, oh, she was doing a show somewhere, and she'd be like, oh yeah, you should come do an opening set. And it's just like kind of got me into performing, and like she really was super helpful in that. She would just kind of throw me out there on stage and just be like, do your thing.
That's sometimes what it comes down to, right? It's just literally getting on stage and then putting your music out. Now, you mentioned being a producer of it, or coming out of, you know, was it audio engineering school?
Yeah, it was audio engineering, like music production.
And so you're still actually producing for other artists as well. How do you kind of bring your own experiences to producing for other artists, and what are you taking away from other artists when you're producing with them and bring to your own music?
Yeah, I think I was definitely not a technically minded person, which engineering is a lot of that is about. And I was not like a person who like knows gear or knows like stuff like that. And music theory was not big on that. So I'm kind of more so just kind of a songwriter, and someone who like, you know, wants to feel the emotions of the song, or like wants to like create things that I can't really describe like how to do it. So I think as a producer, what like I bring to it is just kind of a songwriter's mentality of like, is this song making us feel how we want it to make us feel from start to finish? And like, how do we need to change things to make that right? If that's more guitar, or if that's less guitar, or if that's, you know, more snare drum, or it's like, it's all just kind of, I see it as like emotional, I guess. You know? So yeah, I think I'm kind of a song-based producer.
Yeah. Well, I think you've certainly got an intuitive nature about it because your songs are really beautifully arranged and.
Oh, thank you.
And no, I'm a fan of your music, so it's something really like casual listening, you know, when you just want to kind of relax and throw something cool, easy listening, right? And I think you kind of mentioned to me before this, your dad listened to a lot of adult contemporary music, you described it, right?
Yeah,
and I think that's all
into it,
right?
Nora Jones, jazzy stuff,
so super easy listening.
Yeah.
So what's on the horizon for you? You've been in the studio a bit, more tours coming up. Do you got an album or singles or? What's going on?
Yeah, so I have that new song that I played, What Do You Miss? And it's coming out March 31st.
Which might be before this airs, actually, right? So
yeah. So hopefully it's out. Like I think it'll be out by that time. And we shot a really cool music video for it with a amazing director, Darian Trotman, and we put together a really cool music video, and that's kind of the next step. And then I'm working on an EP that goes with that single, and it's kind of like a bit of an evolution of my sound. Like it's a little bit jazzier, a little darker, a little weirder, I guess. And it incorporates a lot of like amazing musicians, like all these guys that you saw here. And
Well, weird is always good. I think weird's always bold and pushing the boundaries, so that's awesome.
Weird.
Last question for you. If you had a dream venue that you could play at, what would that dream venue be? Anywhere in the world, any place, any point in time even?
Oh, that's like tough to say, really. A dream venue. Probably Commodore, I guess.
The Commodore, right here in town?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just like very much like, would love to play the Commodore. Would love to headline the Commodore.
Yeah, it's funny, like you know, we've had some musicians in here before, and they've said everything from, we had one musician say, I'd love to play Red Rocks Amphitheater, but I'd also love to play the Commodore. It sounds like Commodore just really has like an endearing, sweet place in people's hearts, right?
It's ingrained in like a Vancouver artist. Like if you're headlining the Commodore, like you made it.
Yeah,
so.
That's probably one of the best venues in town, I'd say. So
yeah, it's a cool venue. I like that venue.
Cool venue. Yeah. So Matt, well, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Loved your music, and we'll see you soon. So.